Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's podcast, taking care of business today with two Canadian sports legends, former sports legends, Theo Fleury, former NHL star, and Jamie Salé, who is a former Olympic medalist in Canada. Thanks for joining us today, both of you.
Thank you
Yeah,
for having
our pleasure. Thank you.
Well, you both are involved with a fairly new organization, national organization out there called Canadians for Truth. Tell me what that is and what you guys do.
So, a gentleman named Joseph Bourgault, who is a very successful manufacturer in northern Saskatchewan, manufactures farm equipment, started this organization in 2020 because he saw that they weren't talking about therapeutics, they weren't talking about the dangers of mask wearing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so what they did is they went around and talked about the importance of using therapeutics and the dangers of masking your kids and all that. And then Joseph joined the trucker movement and went to Ottawa with the truckers. And when he got there, he recognized that they weren't very organized. And so he got a whole bunch of hotel rooms. He got some conference rooms, got, I believe it was the 8 captains of the convoy together and got organized and made sure that it remained a peaceful protest. So while Joseph was in Ottawa, Aaron O'Toole stepped down as the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. And that's where I come into the picture because Joseph called me and said, I'm going to run for leadership. Would you campaign with me? And I said, absolutely, 100%. I would love to do that. So we focused on Saskatchewan and Alberta for our campaigning. We were required to reach some milestones to get into the race. So we got all of the signatures. We raised $100,000 more than we were supposed to in a very, very short amount of time. We submitted it to the Conservative Party Canada committee, and they subsequently kicked us out of the race, which then exposed the Conservative Party of Canada as being as corrupt as the Liberal Party of Canada. And there really isn't a party in Canada who represents Jamie and I's and the collective patriot movement in Canada, our voice. So Joe was like, okay, well, what are we going to do now? And I suggested, even before we started campaigning, I suggested that maybe it might be a good idea to start a media company in Calgary. And so last August, we secured an office here in Calgary and built a studio. And for the last, 8 or 9 months, we've been putting content out there where we're discerning the truth, right? Because the mainstream media has lied from day one of the pandemic, and we try to find experts in the field of medical, political, and we bring them on the show, and we try to discern the truth and get people to maybe think differently, and obviously we're gaining momentum. And we have a lot of interest. Jamie and I also do a live show called Fire and Ice with a live studio audience, and these shows have been incredibly popular in the movement, and we've had some amazing guests, and the shows bring people together who are maybe alone in the world or in their situation, and it brings a community of patriots together where we can share our voices and our ideas together, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So tell me, from the initial, obviously, a conception of all this was more so related to the pandemic, but you've gone beyond that, right? And not to add more different topics and issues out there, right?
Yeah, because there's so many right now, right? So there's no lack of content, that's for sure. So and I forgot to mention during the campaign, somebody suggested to me, why don't you give Jamie a call and see if she might be interested in coming on board? So I called her and she was a bit hesitant, but Jamie and I have a relationship that goes back to it goes back to the Olympics in 2002, where we were both competing at the same Olympics, and then her and I got together in 2010, and we're on the very popular show Battle of the Blades, where Jamie took this rusty old hockey player and turned him into a pairs figure skater, and we had such an amazing time together, and she's just a wonderful human being, and it's been great to have her side by side here.
Well, let me ask you, Jamie, why did you get involved in this?
So my story is one that is, I think, very relatable to many people. In the beginning of the pandemic, if you will, I think you and I were talking, and I was totally not aware of what was really going on. I was, doing my best to help individuals. I was life coaching. I was helping people manage their way through this situation and how to find the gift in it. And we were talking positivity and how we can all stay sane. And I was just not really doing exactly what they were telling me, but I wasn't aware of what was going on. And then I would say by that winter, so about 10 months later, I was like, something's not right. And it took one conversation with a girlfriend of mine who shared some information that wasn't being privy to being shared with the public. And so I said, where are you finding this? And she's like, oh, well, you won't find any truth on mainstream. So you have to go and search for this on alternative sites. Well, that was game over for me. And I woke up because I was already fairly awake to feeling something was wrong.
Yeah.
And and so shortly after that was when Theo reached out to me, and I was only hesitant because my awakening was really disturbing. It was I lost a lot of people in my life because they thought that I was going down a very dark path with very dark people, and with a very terrible ending. I've heard it all. I've been called everything in the book. I started going to rallies because I needed to be around people who were thinking like me and seeing what was going on. And so lost my best friend group. My marriage was over. My family was all crying and concerned about me. People in my community were talking about me. And then Theo reached out again to say, well, we want to create a media team here. We want to create a platform where we can create our own content and share truth with Canadians. And that really excited me. Can't say I ever saw myself as being the interviewer. But you know what? Here we are, and we are, as Theo says, the patriots of this freedom movement. And as difficult as it's been for many of us, if not all of us, I wouldn't trade it in for anything. I'm grateful that I'm on this side of it now, and I'm helping Canadians. This isn't just a selfish thing that we're doing. We're really doing this for our children, our families, and Canada and the world. I mean, this is a global takeover. This isn't just in Canada. So, we're really grateful that we have our team, and we're what I love, Mario, is that when you wake up to what is going on in the world, everyone starts to talk about having a connection with Source, God. And that was really powerful for me. And then so when I connected with Joe and Theo, that was basically the root or the nucleus of that company was going to be that God is like our CEO. And so, it's really important to have that alignment moving forward, because we have to have the same values. We don't want to have the values of these dark elites anymore. We need to get rid of this culture. So yeah, I'm really proud to be a part of Canadians for Truth, and Theo has just been an incredible strength for me, because I was a hot mess for many months. I was barely able to, get up some days. And so he kind of kept me going. And I get emotional about when I talk about that, because he was there for me when my brother was struggling back years ago, and he helped my brother get to rehab. So here we are again, Theo.
So Theo, maybe can you explain your role in this, the why behind it? Like why are you, and you seem very passionate about this. Why?
Well, there's a lot of similarities to my past and my present. Okay. So at the beginning of COVID, I was basically traveling somewhere once a week, speaking on the subject of trauma, mental health, and addiction, because they're all connected, right?
Hmm.
So that kind of stopped. They locked us down, put masks on us, all this stuff. And I fell into a really deep, dark depression. And I was like, what the hell's going on here? Like I've spent $1 million on therapy. I've done 10,000 hours of therapy. I've done every therapy known to mankind. And here I am once again, stuck in, this depression. And basically I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I stopped showering. Like I was in my house coat for weeks at a time. So I book an appointment with my therapist and we start talking about what's going on. And she says, stop. She goes, do you realize the similarities of the techniques that your pedophile abuser used against you? Well, the government is using those same kind of tactics, which is manipulation, coercion, lying, stealing, and cheating. And so, I was probably groomed by one of the most notorious pedophile abusers in the history of Canada. And here I am comparing him to what, the government of Canada is doing to the people. And so because I wasn't speaking, I was getting lots of requests to do podcasts. And so I started to explain what I just explained to you. And then all of a sudden my phone blew up. And people were reaching out saying, thank you for connecting the dots for me, because I was in the same situation as you. And, anybody that knows anything about mental illness, where is the worst place you can be when you experience mental health challenges? Locked in your house, inside of your own head. And so what did we see happen at the beginning of COVID? We saw a spike in mental illness. We saw a spike in opioid use. We saw a spike in 8-year-olds having suicidal ideations. And then ultimately we had people taking their own lives. And I couldn't sit around and watch this without, speaking up and explaining systemic government abuse, right? Nobody ever uses that phrase, because these people know, because we're in a psychological and spiritual war, right? There's no tanks out on the street. There's no, soldiers or whatever. This is a psychological and spiritual war. And because I'd been on my healing journey, I knew that I had to reach into my toolbox and, up my spiritual game, up my, my healing, so to speak. And so for the last 3 years, it's really kind of forced me into, doing more healing, researching holistic medicine, holistic practices. Meditation is, probably one of the greatest tools that I have now that's really sort of kept me sane through this whole entire last 3 years. And so, I just been out there talking about it. And, when people reach out, those are some of the suggestions that I give to them. And, they come back almost immediately and say, wow, that was so great. Thank you for, suggesting that.
So I want to ask you both the same question, and we'll start with Jamie. How do you respond to, obviously you guys have been through a tough time here, that in terms of the response that you get, there's one side of it that's great and behind you and behind the movement, right? But then there's the other side, right? That will probably consider you guys crazy people, wing nuts, right? How do you respond to that?
Well, that's an interesting question, because in the beginning, Mario, when, I always tell everybody I was an athlete most of my life, and we don't speak out. I mean, generally you don't see a lot of athletes speaking out because A, it causes controversy, and B, for me, it wasn't my personality to have an opinion about specific things, especially politics.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I totally forgot what the question was. I'm so sorry.
How do you respond to what
Oh,
young people?
yeah.
Yeah.
So then I
The,
reached
the
out to Theo.
negativity.
Yeah.
I reached out to Theo, and I at the beginning of me speaking, I said, how do you do this? Because I was getting annihilated. And he said, first of all, ignore them. Don't read the comments. But he said, Jamie, it's this or we die. Like, people don't realize that that's what we're up against. We're being taken over, and people just have their heads in the sand and they don't want to look at what's really going on. And so I knew that I was on the right path of speaking out, and I was guided to speak out. I was told one day in my meditation, it's go time. So I knew that I was doing the right thing, but really not paying attention to the haters, because for me now, the haters at this point, the truth is all out there. We went through a tough period of hanging in there and trying to ignore them. And now at this point, it's all out. The truth of everything is out. And so I think the problem that we're seeing with those people that are firing back at us is that they lost the argument, and now they're in panic mode, and they're scared. And you know what? I would be too, to some degree. I'd be quite scared if I was arguing against people that were just trying to share truth the whole time and calling them conspiracy theorists and bigots and racists and terrorists and whatever else we've been called. I'd be scared too. And the truth hurts. And you know what? It's really, really difficult to come to grips with the fact that, a lot of us have trusted in our government. We've trusted in our medical industry, and that they've all been, and even the media. I remember when I was skating, so many times our interviews were construed, like twisted and manipulated to fit the narrative that reporter wanted or had in mind, right?
Mhm.
And Dave and I would always go like, I hate doing interviews, man. These people lie. Like, they can't tell the whole story. Like, they can't tell it truthfully. But then when I was trying to share with him that we were being lied to right now through this pandemic, he said to me, well, who are we supposed to trust and listen to? And I said, well, not the media, not the mainstream media. Like, what have you forgotten in all this? But this is what happened with everyone. They just kind of got so caught up in the fear of it, and like tunnel vision of like, I just need to do what I'm told. And I just was shocked at the response of people that were already aware of how the media and the government is, and they just bought into this.
Yeah.
So, but you know what? Like I said, Mario, the truth is out, and Theo and I talk every day. We're just like, it's actually comical now.
Mhm.
We just laugh it off, because what else are we going to do? The Great
Mhm.
Awakening, we are living it. And these people who don't want to face the truth have a really, really difficult time coming.
Yeah.
What about you, Theo? Like, how do you respond to those people who think of you guys that way?
Well,
Yeah,
I
Theo.
know, I know what the truth is, right? So, the CIA, in after the JFK assassination, made up the word conspiracy theorist, right? And then shortly after that, the World Economic Forum was created, right? So, I'm going to read you something about the truth about conspiracy theorists. So, conspiracy theorists, otherwise known as people capable of pattern recognition. Okay. Pattern recognition, according to IQ test designers, is a key determinant of a person's potential to think logically, verbally, numerically, and spatially. Compared to all mental abilities, pattern recognition is said to have the highest correlation with the so-called general intelligence factor. So people who can recognize patterns are among the highest IQs on the planet. And, when I read that, I was like, why did I wake up? Why was I so attuned to what was going on? Well, I had already been through some sort of recognition through my own trauma, my own healing journey, that now I can recognize patterns almost immediately. And that's what I recognized at the beginning of COVID. I saw what the government was doing,
Yep.
And, you know, I made a promise to myself a long time ago that when I saw abuse, I was going to call it out. And because I'm calling out the abuse, of course, I'm going to be a target, right? And at this point, I really don't care. And I know that I'm standing in my truth. And, you know, I've said this many times. For 27 years, I carried around the secret that almost killed me. And when I was able to reveal what the secret was, that's when my life changed. And so the truth is so important in this moment, in this present time, that, yeah, the majority of people don't want to know what the truth is, right? They don't want to admit that they've been fooled, that they've been, you know, bamboozled, all that stuff. And, you know, the majority of the population is traumatized. And when you're traumatized, you can't critically think because you're only surviving day to day. And then, you know, there's another thing called Stockholm syndrome, where you're actually still attached to your abuser. And a lot of these people are still attached to what the government has done to them and is still defending them. So, you know, from a psychological perspective, nobody ever talks about the psychology around what they have done and what they continue to do, because it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week campaign of systemic government abuse.
Now, you know what, when we're talking about all this and truth, I'm always go back to the famous movie scene with Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson. I can't remember the
Yes.
You
Yes.
can't handle
You can't handle the truth.
A Few Good Men.
handle the truth, right?
Yeah, you can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
So the other thing that Theo talked about, Stockholm syndrome, there's the Manchurian candidate too, right? That is where we've all been, you know, this whole brainwashing, indoctrination, and it's so much easier to believe the lie than face the truth. And that's what we're experiencing. And I know, and you know what, I have sat here in awe many days, Mario, and I do it without judgment of calling people losers or idiots, but it's just been so shocking to me. You know, because I was there a bit in the beginning too, right? I was asleep, as they say, and then I woke up to everything, but it's still so shocking to me how deep this runs. Like, we talk daily, Theo and I, going like, I cannot get over how people aren't seeing this, but it's not even really entirely their fault. Theo talks about trauma and how, you know, they're just attached to their abuser and they don't even realize it. Like, it's so sick what they've done to us.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, Mario, you know, think about the script they rolled out 80 years ago in Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
It's the exact same script 80 years later, to a T. If you read about anything about how they got people to fall in line to get into the, you know, the boxcars and go to the, you know, to the gas chambers, this is the exact same script. And
It's
unfortunately, you know what I mean? And so, you know, 3 years, you know, both Jamie and I went down the proverbial rabbit hole, so to speak, and, you know, did the research. I've watched, I don't know, hundreds of hours of videos on history. And, you know, like I said, it's the same script 80 years later. And, you know, it all started with the woke stuff, right? It all started with them, you know, confusing people about their identities and who they are and all of that. And now look at it. It's, you know, we you know, we've gotten to the point, excuse me, where, you know, these drag shows are everywhere. Okay. And they're grooming our kids, right? And what we're seeing is, you know, the mayor of Calgary and the Calgary Police Service is actually supporting this kind of behavior. And that's the same kind of tactics they used 80 years ago. It's the same thing, you know, and, you know, we're getting the same phrases. I was just doing my job, right? I was just doing my job. Well, you know, we're at a critical point here, and you know, so it's really, really important to continue to speak the truth, because you know, the alternative is well, and it's already happening. Mass genocide is happening, and they have a depopulation agenda, and you know, people need to be aware of what's going on, right?
All right. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for joining us today. Interesting topic, no doubt.
Thanks, Mario.
Thanks, Mario.
All right,
Appreciate
that was Theo Fleury and Jamie Saleh, who are with Canadians for Truth. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's podcast. Thanks for joining us today.